Arizona.
Already closed.
Yes, all right. Let's get out to John Huddy now, our senior correspondent, who's checking in from West Palm Beach, Florida, at the watch party for the Trump campaign. John, how's it looking out there?
A big cheer went up as Trump was, said to be the winner of Montana, as the state was called for Trump. Also, a big cheer went up when Florida was called for Trump as well. And one of the things we talked about earlier, Miami-Dade County, Trump winning Miami-Dade County, which is traditionally voted blue. So he essentially shattered that blue wall in Miami-Dade County. We started seeing that during the midterm elections in 2022 when Governor Ron DeSantis had a great deal of support in South Florida, particularly in the Miami area. So there were projections back then that possibly Trump was going to take, the Hispanic Latino vote in Miami-Dade County. We saw that play out. And also, I want to talk about the down ballot measures, because the last time I was on with you guys, John, you asked me about Amendments 3 and 4. Well, Florida voters rejected both. Amendment 3 had to do with the legalization of marijuana for recreational use. That did not pass muster with Florida voters. Amendment 4 would have created an amendment, a constitutional amendment protecting abortion rights here in Florida. That failed as well. Both of those measures, both of those amendments, Governor DeSantis worked really to block both of those amendments. He was against both of them. Although President Trump was in support of Amendment 3, so there was the contrast between former President Trump and Governor DeSantis about Amendment 3. But as I said, both of those down ballot measures, down ballot amendments, failed this evening. Mrs. Trump is at some point expected to come here. Whether that happens tonight really depends, and another big cheer going on that looks like having to do with the numbers coming out of Virginia. But the campaign, even former President Trump earlier today, said that he was going to more than likely be coming to the convention center, but it really depends on how this goes. It could be a very late evening. This could stretch into the wee hours in the morning. We'll just have to see. But what we do know, John and Bianca, as I mentioned earlier, former President Trump is at Mar-a-Lago. He is there with family. He is there with close friends. His senior advisors, campaign staff, Elon Musk, watching the election results come in there, and then they'll make that determination when
they still want the cast to mess with this.
Ultimately, he would come to the convention center. But I can tell you this, the mood here, very energetic, very optimistic, very nervous. I keep hearing that a lot, John and Bianca. People say, man, I'm nervous. I think we've all been. Look, this has been an extraordinary campaign and road to get to this point, this historic evening, and that is certainly being felt here in the room right now.
John Huddy for us live in West Palm Beach, Florida. John, thank you for that. The updates on those amendments. They do have to get 60% of the vote to pass, and they're not doing that. And the Amendment 3, the issue to legalize recreational marijuana
In Florida.
They spent a ton of money trying to get that to pass, and there was a big problem with the law. Governor DeSantis called it out for this. Even though it legalizes recreational marijuana, you were not allowed to grow it at your house. It was a gift to a lot of these big marijuana companies, according to Ron DeSantis, and his influence probably being felt there. All right, let's do an update now on the situation in Pennsylvania. We got some new data coming in, and as you can see here on the screen, it is so close. It's gone back and forth. Kamala Harris is leading by just 0.5 of a percentage point right now. So you can see how close it is in Pennsylvania. And when we had Senator Santorum on before, as I call him, Mr. Pennsylvania, he was indicating that some of these counties, with the election results coming in, we're going to go ahead and turn red, and that's what it's looking like. Just Allegheny County in the Pittsburgh area right now is trending towards Kamala Harris with 66% of the vote in. But all the surrounding counties around Pittsburgh are shaded red right now for Donald Trump. And this is not good news for the Harris campaign right now. Obviously, they're still in the lead. We got just 43% of the votes being counted. But what's happening right now is it's trending in the direction that Donald Trump wants to see. A lot of the early votes were not counted until the polls closed at 8 o'clock. Those results are coming in. But what we saw is Republicans outperform what they've done in the past with the early voting, with the mail-in voting. And traditionally, they have shown up on Election Day as well. And the question was, will was the early voting going to cannibalize the day of voting? And we don't see any evidence of that right now.
And also, in
Hi,
Allegheny
guys.
County, and this is the suburbs
Chat
of
is
Pittsburgh, it's
open.
important to note in the
Let's
past,
talk
this was
about it.
Clinton plus 17, Biden plus 20. It speaks perhaps her lack of strength as a candidate.
It is.
And also the black vote.
I want to hear what
And
you all
Donald Trump
think.
was in Pittsburgh last night. Steel workers. He was at the Steelers game a few weeks ago, and you just saw sort of this wide swath of voters. You know, even announcing he had Rogan's endorsement. He did that in Pittsburgh. He brought Megyn Kelly out. She spoke about the mothers and the trans issue. So Donald Trump has really been able to effectively articulate a message that's resonating with people from a lot of different backgrounds. And we knew that the metro areas there in Pittsburgh could be key for deciding this race. Again, Pennsylvania, you just showed it, John.
Yep.
Pretty exciting if you are a Donald Trump this evening looking at those results.
And we heard the cheers in the background when John Huddy was reporting live from West Palm Beach. Let's check in with James Rosen, our chief White House correspondent, who's at the Harris party, to see if you've had any similar eruptions of cheers. James, what can you tell us?
It's been a while since we heard some cheering from the several thousand Harris supporters attending here tonight at Howard University, the vice president's alma mater, awaiting their favorite candidate, who's still going to be some time before she arrives here. The music has been put on hold from the giant sound systems, and instead there's a giant TV screen showing what we will delicately call another network. And every time that network shows results favorable to former President Trump, it is deathly quiet amongst the several thousand folks in attendance here tonight. And when that screen shows results favorable to the vice president, then we usually hear a roar. But just recently they showed Michigan, which of course is not got a majority of the votes counted even, and where the vice president is believed to enjoy a slight lead. And until just a few moments ago when that Michigan screen flashed, anytime Michigan showed up, even with a slight lead, no matter how small the number of ballots counted in the Great Lakes state, the crowd was cheering. But this time when they brought up Michigan, it barely got a response from this crowd. So when you ask me what is the vibe here, vibes being so important to the Harris for President campaign since the beginning in July, I would say it's starting to turn a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? A bit weary, a bit apprehensive. That's really the word I'm looking for. And we know that President Biden is also watching the returns in the White House, the forgotten man in tonight's balloting. He's placed calls to a number of the winners tonight so far, various mayors and governors elect. And it was interesting also to see what the vice president spent her time doing today. She was at the vice president's residence, the U.S. Naval Observatory grounds in Northwest Washington. She spent part of the morning calling into 4 different radio programs, one in Pittsburgh, one in Philadelphia, one in Atlanta, and then one in Raleigh, North Carolina. Each of them strategic choices showing where the campaign thought potentially in these late hours, these last hours of voting, they thought they could still mobilize voters. And then the vice president took an unannounced trip over to DNC headquarters in Washington. She was greeted by the DNC chair, Jamie Harrison, and she arrived with deep thanks and boxes of Doritos for the volunteers there. She spent a bit of time, the vice president did, manning the phone bank. At one point, she asked if someone had voted, and she asked their name and said, well, I'm Kamala Harris. And then she said, we're waiting for you to grow 10 years, meaning that the phone banks had succeeded in placing the Democratic Party nominee on the phone with an 8-year-old. In any case, the last we heard from the White House press pool that is holding steady at the vice president's residence was that there was a lid, which is a White House lingo meaning nothing's going on, nothing to cover, no movement, no events, until 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time. That's just the earliest, according to the White House, that the vice president might set out the few miles journey across Washington, D.C. from the vice president's residence here to her alma mater at Howard University. Jonathan Young.
Quickly, James, you said there's people gathering there, but no one's behind you. Are they corralled off over? Is there like an open bar or something? It just seems so lackluster there. And
Do we have an open bar?
I know said network, they're cheering, so maybe it's TV monitors, or they put you in the cheap seats.
Well, through research and deep investigative reporting, I can confirm that there is no open bar present here tonight. But I'm going to ask my cameraman, Mike Palmer, to widen out and pan out a little bit so we can give you a better view view of the scene here, and maybe push in if you could, Mike, so that you can see the several thousand supporters. The vice president, when she speaks, is going to be standing at a lectern protected by bulletproof glass, aided by teleprompters, in front of Frederick Douglass Memorial Hall, a place of great symbolism here at Howard University and perhaps across the country. Now, I don't know what you can see there. You can see the crowd standing, right? It's an open area, grassy area, fenced in, and well behind them, there are two sections of bleachers. I would say maybe 30 to 40% of this several thousand throng has bleacher seats. The rest are standing. And guess what, folks? They have been standing, most of them, since around 5 p.m., 4 p.m. today. And they have a lot of standing still to go. The question is whether they'll have occasion for much cheering later this evening.
James Rosen, excellent reporting. Thanks for that pan, just to give us sort of a visual of what you're seeing behind you there. Maybe not that much joy, but well, they're hoping.
Joy is a relative term, Bianca. You know, you have to be able to find joy, even when the chips are down. Let's welcome in now former National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign and former Principal Deputy Press Secretary at the White House. You know him, you love him. It's Hogan Gidley back with us this evening, holding the microphone like he's a professional, like he's a reporter out there. It's not always easy. It's not as easy as it looks, but Hogan makes it look easy. Hogan, give us an update.
It is that easy.
It kind of is. All right, maybe just not easy for me. But, Hogan, give us an update. We're looking at the numbers coming out of Pennsylvania now. Looks like Donald Trump has just creeped out to a lead there. Things are looking very promising in Wisconsin as well. What are you hearing?
Listen, this has long been a conversation inside the campaign and then within members of the media too, is to watch what they have done with the early vote and then watch what they're doing on day of voting. The question always was, are you cannibalizing your day of vote? And instead of them voting on election day, you just have them vote early, but the numbers don't change. I don't think that's the case. Right now, what we're seeing, a lot of optimism on our side because those early voters typically don't vote in elections. They're called low propensity voters. They're the 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 scale. They're on the low end of people who support politicians at all. In fact, most of them didn't vote. The last time I guess they participated was somewhere around 2018. So the fact is, those early votes did not cannibalize day of, and now the massive turnout operation that Trump kind of outsourced to other groups looks like right now it's paying off. Of course, there's some high increase in vote tallies in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, but it's in the areas where Trump is most popular. So we have a long way to go tonight. Who knows when this thing is going to get called, but right now, I'd much rather be where Donald Trump is than where Kamala Harris is. And now I've done this, for 2016, 2020. I've never seen numbers like this for Donald Trump.
He was very calm today, too. He said he felt like he ran the best campaign. That's when he was voting with Melania. We know he's at Mar-a-Lago with Elon Musk and friends and family. Obviously, he had his entire family out at the rallies last night. We were watching what, obviously history in the making. Hogan, the messaging, as someone who was once, deputy press secretary, what other networks were saying, and the fascists, the Nazis, how legacy media really hasn't, been attacking Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris, as a candidate, was able to use that to her advantage, but still maybe not to enough of an advantage for the American people who are seeing through legacy media's lies.
I think so, and in large part because Donald Trump's not a Nazi or a fascist because he was already president and didn't operate that way. Not to mention the whole thing is an absolute lie. If Donald Trump really was a Nazi and they really believed that, then why would Joe Biden put on a MAGA hat at a rally and joke around? Why would Senate candidates on the Democrat side be using Donald Trump in their ads to try and win an election? Why would they sit there in the room while Donald Trump was giving jokes at the Al Smith dinner if he was so bad? They know that's not true. And Kamala Harris is so inauthentic. She's a say anything do anything politician to get votes, and you know that. She doesn't care if she lies about Donald Trump. She lied about Joe Biden. She said he was a racist and a rapist on a debate stage. The thing about Kamala is you can't sell a bad product, and right now it looks as though, even though the time frame was condensed to a few months, even though they had billions of dollars and 90% positive news coverage on Kamala Harris, billions of dollars of free positive news coverage, it doesn't look like it's really made the impact they thought it would. We got a long way to go still tonight, a lot of numbers, a lot of folks still out there voting. We have to make sure that this thing comes home for Donald Trump.
Yes.
But again, I've seen things now I have not seen in the past in my 25 years of Republican politics.
Incredible. That's right. History in the making. We the people. People are still voting. There's actually polls that are still open out west. So Hogan Gidley, great to have you with us as you're kind of giving us a feel of what's going on in the room there. We know we'll be checking back with you throughout this evening and maybe the morning hours. Thanks, Hogan.
We'll be up late tonight. There's an after party too, I'm told.
Oh, really?
Just kidding. No after party. It's in our bedrooms. All right.
I just got a fresh coffee, so we're good.
Yes, I did too. Nice and warm. Thanks to Jerry here in the studio bringing us
Thanks,
coffee.
Jerry.
All right, let's welcome in now host of the Leventhal Report here on Into, Rick Leventhal. And we were just talking with Hogan Gidley, Rick, about this realignment. And, it's not just in one state, and there's only so much you can put into these exit polls. But when you look at Wisconsin, Donald Trump has doubled his support among black voters in Wisconsin and also in Georgia, too. We're talking about between 15 and 20%. Iowa is called for Donald Trump here, 52 to 47%. And this was a big topic of discussion. That Ann Seltzer poll from the Des Moines Register thought of as the gold standard. She came out with an outlier poll, Rick, and that had Kamala Harris ahead. But clearly didn't pan out very well, did it?
Well, I want to share a personal story, John and Bianca. Back in 2016, I was working at the Republican headquarters in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on election night. And at some point during the night, I started paying attention to the New York Times. And they have a graph on their website. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a needle, and it goes either towards the blue for the Democrat or towards the red for the Republicans. And it was incredibly accurate. And I was there until I think 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when they finally called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump back in 2016. Well, I've been watching that graph tonight, and I'm reporting on another outlet, the New York Times, but they've been very accurate on these things, and they now have a 78% chance of victory for Donald Trump. 78% chance, according to the New York Times right now. They have him winning 295 electoral votes to Harris's 243. They have Trump winning the popular vote by 0.6%, which would be remarkable if that proves to be the case, based on all of the negative press that Hogan mentioned and all of the stuff that's been thrown at Donald Trump, all the rhetoric, all the nastiness. If he can actually win the popular vote and crush Harris in the Electoral College, which it looks like he might, the New York Times reporting that Donald Trump has a 78% chance of victory right now.
People are texting me that as well about the needle in the New York Times, and I'm sure it kind of
Combine
kills
that
them a
with
little to have to say that.
combine that with the betting markets, which of course are not scientific.
Yes, go ahead.
The way people are feeling about it, you go on Polymarket right now, and it's pinned Donald Trump all the way to the top, Kamala Harris all the way at the bottom. No one's buying Harris, everyone's buying Trump. And what can we figure? This is what people feel, not necessarily based on the results, but the results are probably leading people to feel this way clearly. And stuff like Britt was talking about, the needle pinned in favor of Republicans.
And Rick, I want to ask you too, because Kamala Harris has trotted out every celebrity under the sun that she could to try and get her across the finish line. Oprah, you will never vote again. We heard last night in the closing. And you're in the West Coast and in Southern California. The celebrity Holly Weird. This has been sort of a crutch for her as a candidate.
Well, it could have backfired on her. Do we really care who Harrison Ford is voting for, or George Clooney says we should vote for, or who Lady Gaga is supporting? I mean, it's really no surprise that she would come out in favor of Kamala Harris, but we saw Hillary Clinton make that same mistake back in 2016. She had a big rally in Philadelphia the night before the election, and she brought out all the stars, and she lost Pennsylvania, and she lost the election. And a lot of people are making that comparison, saying that Kamala Harris spent too much time courting the celebrities and not enough time answering tough questions or connecting with real voters. And when Donald Trump kept asking that question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? The answer for most people is absolutely not. And that could be a key reason why more people are picking Donald Trump in the voting booths than they are Kamala Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and think about the celebrities too that were endorsing the different candidates and what they actually do. I mean, Cardi B is going to sing some nasty lyrics to you. Oprah Winfrey is going to talk down to you and tell you how great her life is. But Elon Musk is going to build rockets. He's going to provide a car that you actually needed, Starlink, and provide internet for people who don't have it otherwise.
And bought Twitter.
Right. You think about Robert Kennedy Jr. and how he wants to make America healthy again. These are tangible things that people actually want, as opposed to the celebrities on the Democratic side.
I agree.
Sometimes sing new songs. Sometimes they don't perform, but they're there.
Can we first De Niro
Can I take a moment here to just to pat myself on the back? When Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris, I went on Newsmax and said it wouldn't matter. They actually wrote it up in the New York Times.
Yes,
and
right.
it's on the. I'm on the record, and you know it doesn't matter. These celebrities don't do anything for the American public that have seen their. This to the New York Times. They are predicting 80% for Donald Trump. All right, let's get out to the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, Art Del Cueto, and talk about one of the big issues that voters have been using to motivate them this time when they head to the polls. Art, great to have you with us.
Yes, sir. I'm with you guys. I'm pretty excited. I think we're going to get a win today, and it's not a win for Donald Trump. People need to understand it's a win for America. That's what it comes down to. Because the chaos that you've seen at the border, if we continue with 4 more years of this, it's just not going to be able to be withheld. It's been a mess. We've had individuals from 168 different countries come through, and the only people that have been winning is the drug cartels and the smugglers. It needs to end.
As anybody, Art, but when I've talked to Border Patrol agents over the last few years, the morale has been so low. You think about what happened, especially with the horseback Border Patrol officers, the way they were accused of whipping those Haitian migrants, never got an appropriate apology from the Biden administration or the Department of Homeland Security and Alejandro Mayorkas. But just talk to us, Art, about what it would mean for all the Border Patrol officers who've basically been forced to kind of sit on their hands for the last 4 years. What will it mean to them to wake up tomorrow knowing that there will be a new sheriff in town in Washington, D.C.?
Look, I've been around for quite some time. I saw the morale boost back in 2016, but it's nothing compared to the morale that's going to be boosted after this election if we pull it through and Donald Trump is the new president of this country. Because, like I said, look, agents are frustrated. All they're asking for is to do their jobs. That's all they've been asking for. They realize processing is part of the job. However, tracking down smugglers and tracking down individuals that are coming into the country illegally is also part of their job, and they have been handcuffed on that side because of it. You're going to see the biggest morale boost that you have ever seen within the agency ever if Donald Trump can be the next president of the United States again.
Art, the last time I saw you in person, we were down at the border in Arizona. with J.D. Vance in Montezuma Pass, and drones flying above our head from the other side in Mexico. But there's the human aspect of this that, the Democrats that purport to be, all for women, they're trying to drive women voters to Kamala. There's 320,000 missing children. There are women being raped as they come across with cartel members. There are children being sold into slave labor, sex trade, and then there are innocent women and children. Jocelyn Nungaray, Rachel Moore, Laken Riley would go on and go on. I think that really hit home in the past few weeks where Donald Trump was able to humanize and tell that message through some really powerful folks, angel moms who came across. Can you just talk to us about the hypocrisy of the left and that issue right there? Because that hurts my heart as a mother.
No, absolutely. It's horrific what this administration has done. They've tried to flip the script and try to control the narrative, but people need to understand the crisis that we're seeing at the border. This administration has caused it. When you're seeing the children that are coming across, that they're missing children, that all falls on this administration because they empowered the smugglers, they empowered the drug traffickers, and they continue. Look, the drug traffickers don't care. They use the individuals that are coming across. They use them almost like human cattle. And this administration, with the lack of consequences towards the crime, have empowered them even more so. And we've all seen it. Look, President Trump had the plan to fix it, and the numbers were low. Day one of this administration taking over, everything boosted up. And the only individual that can fix it is Donald Trump. That's why I continue to say it's not just a win for Donald Trump, it's a win for America. And it's a win for the rest of the world because they're the victims.
And if he was to win, not just deportations, but also penalties, if you kill an American, death penalty, things like that, taking on the cartels. Artel Quo, you tell the story so well. We know you're a great force out there on the front line. So thank you so much for being a part of our coverage tonight. We know the Border Patrol has some very dedicated folks there. We appreciate them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Yeah, those Border Patrol agents that were accused of whipping those Haitian migrants, hopefully, if things change, they will get the justice that they deserve. Never fully been apologized to. All right, let's bring in now GOP strategist Joe Pinion to get his assessment on where things stand right now. And Joe, tell us what you're focused on.
I mean, look, you got to place your hope in the voters down in Pennsylvania. Certainly that race shaping up to be a tight one. But if you're President Trump, I think you're cautiously optimistic. Same thing with Wisconsin. And so you're checking the box. The southern wall has held. North Carolina in President Trump's pocket. Georgia appears to be trending the same way. And so if you're Kamala Harris, your pathway to victory has become much slimmer. And so you look at Virginia. If by some way President Trump is able to win that race, again, it has not been called, but it is quite close than we've seen in a very long time. That tightrope becomes an unwalkable path, and I think President Trump is feeling pretty good right now.
All right, Joe, we're just going to jump in here real quick and call Georgia for President Trump, something we've been looking at for quite a bit, trending in that direction, but now we can officially make the projection that Georgia will be in the win column for Donald Trump, and obviously this is a pickup from 2020, Georgia going to Joe Biden and Democrats in 2020. Now in 2024, it is in the win column for Donald Trump. So a huge victory there, and this is also backing up the information that we had going into tonight that these Sun Belt states would hold for Donald Trump. So you got Georgia and North Carolina both in the victory column for Donald Trump. I'm sorry, Joe, I had to cut you off there. Just wanted to get that.
I think it points to that specific point that if you're Kamala Harris now, it's not a matter of if. The blue wall has to hold. Otherwise, she has a path to victory that has not been walked by any of her predecessors in the modern history of the presidency. And so, yes, we turn our eyes now to places like Arizona, where things look good for President Trump, places like Nevada, where Republicans have felt a little bit like Charlie Brown with Lucy in the football. We think we're close, and then next thing you know, you're staring at the sky. And so, look, this election is far from over. But I think if you're somewhere sitting at Trump headquarters and somewhere sitting at Kamala Harris headquarters, you'd rather be at Trump HQ than Harris HQ right now.
Yeah, sure.
Joe, right now on the front page of newsmax.com, we have an article, and it is low black turnout threatens Harris in key swing states. So obviously some of these suburbs of Atlanta may not have been performing. That's why we are calling the race in Georgia for Donald Trump. Fulton, DeKalb, the most registered black voters. But according to some exit polls that are in, is that when they're talking to folks, there's an overall decrease in black voter participation. But there's also been polls that show Donald Trump has really come up strong with black voters. And even Obama coming out and kind of lecturing them was a backfire. What do you make of some of these exit polls that are saying, you know, this is going to be a problem for Harris? Maybe this is why we're seeing Georgia now, Donald Trump taking that state with the all-important 16 electoral votes.
Black men are sick and tired of being sick and tired. The Democrats, I've often said, they treat us a little bit like the orphan Annie. It's always tomorrow. The promise of America is always a day away when you place your trust in the hands of the Democratic Party. And so you go all the way back to 1964, the mass exodus of black voters from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party complete. I do believe you're starting to see that pendulum swing back, that after decades of empty promises, empty rhetoric, government programs that cost a whole lot of money but didn't yield a whole lot of results, program rich and results poor, you see some people willing to take a chance on what Republicans are offering, and you see others saying, I am not going to participate. They vote by staying home.
And, you know, she did do a lot of podcasts with Shannon Sharp, Charlemagne the God. You know, obviously Biden had that famous exchange, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. So she was speaking to black voters for whatever reason. And, you know, time will tell here of why the message didn't resonate. A lot of what you just said, though, coming back to the economy, coming back to these empty promises. But that could also be for white men as well. There's a lot of empty promises and a lot of college students who said, college, forgive me, I'm dead. They thought they were going to get it. They didn't. So this is, you know, a very interesting thread that we're watching here with this very now significant turn in events for the state of Georgia going for Donald Trump.
Yeah, you can think too about that appearance that Donald Trump had at the National Association of Black Journalists.
Yes.
When he talked about Kamala Harris's background, you know, that he was excoriated for saying that type of stuff. But it's, you know, Joe, you can talk to this probably better than I can, but that's the type of authenticity that was lacking from the Harris campaign. It doesn't matter if you're black, brown, white, whatever. People want authenticity these days. They've seen all the tricks. They've lived through these same campaign promises for decades. They wanted somebody who could actually deliver.
Yeah, I think you look at what's happened here. Kamala Harris had all the union leadership support, but she did not have the rank and file support. She had all of the gatekeepers for the black community supporting her, but she did not necessarily have the same buy-in from the black community that Democrats have been able to take for granted for the better part of the last 40 years. And so I think, to Bianca's point, when you look at the fact that all across this country, 70 to 80% of black children not reading at proficient levels, not able to do math at proficient levels, communities that are not safe, migrants who have been here for less than 3 months getting better treatment than people who have been here living in America for the better part of the last century. This is not sustainable. And I think black people, particularly black men in these swing states, finally saying, count me out.
Joe Pinion, always great to have you with us. Thank you so much for your comments and reaction as we are calling some big races here tonight. It is history in the making. We're glad you're with us right now here on M2.
All right, we'll be right back after this.
Welcome to the most honest commercial you've ever seen. Not the cleanest, just the most honest.
Today, we're fixing a Homes Foundation.
I mean, that is like the most common thing to see in the world.
Good going, yeah.
Right.
So it's the soil that's eroding away, causing those cavities, those voids that the foundation then wants to settle into.
And then you guys with your superhero capes show up and fix everything.
Yes, sir. Get a free and honest inspection with Ohio Basement Authority, the Groundworks Company.
Why is it so hard? I just want a new TV!
You're still doing that?
It's so confusing!
Let me try!
Great! Do we want QLED or OLED or 4K or Hertz or HDMR or HDMR10 or HDMI?
What if we got a Roku TV? It's great for streaming and it updates itself so it keeps getting better!
Just like our marriage!
Every day with you is a gift!
story you've done something about, and we're going to prove.
For today's most outrageous crimes, the most exciting body cam videos, police interrogations, wild jail moments, and crazy cop highlights.
I hope you learned a lesson from this.
I'm John Bachman alongside Bianca De La Garza, and we are waiting for the final results for Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. We just recalled Georgia for Donald Trump. We called North Carolina for Donald Trump, 2 of the swing states, Virginia for Kamala Harris. But it's going to come down to the Rust Belt states, as we've heard so much about. Let's go ahead and take a look here at my computer screen in Wisconsin as we look here. And right now it shows Kamala Harris with the slimmest of leads, 0.4 of a point. But if you look in very southern Wisconsin here at some of these counties here, like Rock County is now favoring Donald Trump. In 2020, Rock County went for Joe Biden by a measure of 54 to 43%, really 55 to 44%. So you see Donald Trump, this is one of the specific places where he has made inroads. In the next county over, in Greene County, Wisconsin, Donald Trump is winning there too. It's razor thin, but what he's been able to do is flip, basically reverse the margin of victory that we saw Joe Biden win this county in 2020. Joe Biden won with 50.7%. Trump is winning now with 50.8%. So you see that is the razor thin margin to which all this is going to come down. Of course, these results are not final. In Greene County, just 74% of the vote total is in. For the state of Wisconsin, 53% of the vote tally is in right now. And as we mentioned, Kamala Harris there with just the slimmest of leads. Actually, Donald Trump, it looks like, has just retaken the lead in Wisconsin now. And this has been going back and forth, this kind of seesaw back and forth for the last 30 minutes or so. So we're watching Wisconsin very closely, but it looks very, very positive for Donald Trump in the granular data.
And it feels like a roller coaster, folks. It certainly is, because Wisconsin actually has been decided by less than a point in 4 of the last 6 election cycles. So here we are, 10 electoral votes for Wisconsin. We're watching it closely. And again, Georgia and North Carolina, 2 battleground states, have been called for Donald Trump. Please bring in radio host, conservative commentator John Reed, and host of Saturday Agenda right here on Newsmax, Rob Astorino. Rob, we'll start with you. Obviously, you're watching results just like we are. We've called some big races here. Georgia, obviously, the most recent and one of them, but this Wisconsin race here with Donald Trump, 53%, and the wow counties could be wowing Donald Trump.
Yeah. No, those wow counties outside of Milwaukee are doing very well for Donald Trump. He had to do well over there to offset some of the Milwaukee numbers. Interesting, though, some heavy rains earlier, for about 4 hours in Wisconsin, went right across, went through Madison, went through Milwaukee. Don't know if that held back some of the vote in some areas or not. But, she's not doing as well as she should in Milwaukee. You look at, like, Florida. I mean, it was a complete and utter blowout in Florida. The propositions went down, for abortion and for marijuana. Trump won huge in Dade County, Miami-Dade. And looking at Long Island, for instance. So Suffolk County, which is eastern Long Island, Donald Trump won by 200 votes 4 years ago. He is blowing out Kamala Harris right now, blowing out by tens of thousands of votes. So that's, it's just extrapolating it everywhere. I mean, Trump is winning with Latino men by 10 points. I mean, a lot of this is historic in how he's doing for a Republican, and it's showing. But one other thing, so he had to flip. He had to hold the states that he won 4 years ago. He did that with North Carolina. He had to flip. Easiest path, flip Georgia, he did it, and if he wins Pennsylvania, it's over.
And that's his way, but there's other ways. And for her, she's got to hold this blue wall.
Yeah, she's got to win. She's got to have a inside straight, basically, to win. She's got to have everything from here on out go according to plan perfectly well, and we haven't seen any evidence of that happening, Rob.
No, and look, let's just take Latino men, okay, where he's winning by 10. Now let's go out to Nevada and Arizona, where there are tons of Latino men and Latinos. And you just think about that across the state of Arizona and Nevada. I mean, Arizona has been trending their way. They feel pretty good about Arizona. Nevada, you know, going back and forth, it's a state that they could flip and win. So, I mean, you have to think, if it comes down to those western states, that they're going to feel much better than they would have 4 years ago.
Yeah, of course. John, bringing you into the conversation. Also, New Mexico, he spent some time in Albuquerque. These are places that normally Donald Trump, you know, they're not battleground, but he's connecting with people. To what Rob is talking about, the Latinos, the blacks. What are some of the highlights that you're looking at right now as we're calling some of these races like Georgia for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, Trump has gotten people to give him a second look. There were a lot of people in 2020 of the Democrat strategy worked of make Donald Trump as toxic as possible, sow as much chaos as you possibly could in the process in Washington, make life miserable where people just said, hey, I want to change. Then they got the change. Unfortunately, Democrats, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the entire Democrat team didn't deliver for those folks. So they're willing to give him a second look. And now all of the things that were negative about Donald Trump are baked into the analysis with all of these minority groups that I think Democrats are going to wake up tomorrow morning and go, wow, some of the groups that we thought we had, you know, on the shelf, they were always going to go for us, are reevaluating whether the Democrats deliver for them. And if Donald Trump is the next president, he will be able, I think, to deliver for these groups and kind of shake up the traditional arrangement in a way that will benefit Republicans in down ballot races, hopefully for years to come.
Excellent point. I believe that is true. John Reed, Rob Astorino, thanks for joining us with your analysis of where we are on this historic election for America. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, let's bring in our next panel to discuss the state of the race. Attorney and GOP strategist and a board overseer at Stanford University's Hoover Institute, John Jordan, is with us.
Also, it's welcome to Ford O'Connell, a GOP strategist, here with us as well. And, you know, I've been kind of nerding out on this granular data, looking at these counties. But
away.
I'm here in my natural form, nerding out with the data. But when you think about, you know, what's really driving voters forward, there's a very simple poll that we could all point to that's been consistent no matter who the poll taker is, and that's the right track, wrong track, the country that's been on. Like 70%, as high as 80% in some polls of the people in this country believe that we are on the wrong track over the last 4 years. And what we're learning is that they're not distinguishing between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They assimilate the two as being one and the same. And if these results hold up where things stand right now, that's what we're seeing as a rebuke on these types of policies.
I completely agree with you. In fact, for an incumbent presidential party, told the White House traditionally that number has to be closer to 42%, and only 30% saying the country's on the right track tells you a lot. And I think that's why you haven't had, and maybe soon in the blue wall we're going to see this, but you've not had that suburban turnout that many of the mainstream media are telling us they're going to come out for Kamala Harris. It's why minorities are not turning out for Kamala Harris, particularly in Pennsylvania, in the way they thought, because what independents are telling you, regardless of party, the two issues they care most about right now are inflation, the rising cost of everything, and border security. And that is why Donald Trump right now is cooking in the Sun Belt and obviously about to crack the blue wall.
John, you had a piece on newsmax.com way back talking about Donald Trump having this historic opportunity, I think it was, to secure the black vote. It looks like that's exactly what he is doing tonight.
Yeah, Bianca, I wrote a piece after doing an extensive poll. This is before it was fashionable, of black voters. And we had some startling findings. That 23% of black voters were open to President Trump. The overwhelming majority wanted the police funded. They didn't approve of transgender stuff. They didn't approve of the leftist, the white university faculty room leftist views that have become dominant in the Democrat Party since 2020. Since 1964, Democrats black people largely voted with Democrats because of the Civil Rights Act signed by Lyndon Johnson. But that has started to crack when they started to look and realize that they hadn't been served by these policies, by the professional Democrat class. And they started to challenge it and look around, and they found a champion, or many did, in President Trump. And this is not just a once-in-a-lifetime snapshot. You're looking at real political power being seized by black people now, and they're going to make both parties compete for their vote. And this could be part of a broader realignment in upcoming elections.
Yeah, a lot of promises made on that front, Ford, and yeah, again, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but there are going to be promises, made, promises kept. We'll see on that front. The other thing too I want to talk to you both about is the foreign policy aspect. We've talked about immigration, we've talked about inflation, but something that stands out, I think, a lot of Americans' minds is where we stand as a country on foreign policy. The war in Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East, the fact that China is on the march and promising to invade Taiwan. How much of a factor do you think that is playing with our posture in the world for looking so weak over the last 4 years?
Oh, it's playing a huge role. I just don't think that many in the mainstream media have caught on to what a big role it's playing. And you see this when you go to Pennsylvania, you go to Wisconsin, you go to Michigan. What's amazing here is the Democratic Senate incumbents in those states are talking about tariffs, China, and Donald Trump. So therefore, when you recognize that, you see real quick at the blue wall, they realize that this cannot stand with China. Obviously, I think China's playing in trade is playing a much bigger role than, say, Israel and Ukraine is. But again, Americans don't want to see money sent overseas when people are drowning in North Carolina, when people are being hurt by spills in Ohio. It's about putting Americans first and understanding put American jobs first.
Obviously, Michigan, the Arab vote too plays into what we're seeing in the Middle East, John, and I know you're also a Russia expert, and we've seen sort of Russia get much stronger when it comes to putting, forces in, alignment with North Korea and Ukraine.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the 80s and 90s when we were all growing up, the Republicans were the hawks and were the party of war, supposedly, or so the left made us out to be. And now this is playing a very subtle psychological, cultural role in this realignment, in that now the party of Donald Trump is the party of peace, and they are the party of war. And that's kind of set the table for many young people, and I think we're going to see this in a lot of the postmortems, that this was a big deal, that being the party of peace kind of made you kind of smooth out President Trump's rougher edges and created almost contributory to creating a permission structure to kind of vote for Trump, or at least not be an ardent leftist.
Yeah, we're all kind of tired of the nuclear war headlines that have become way too prevalent as we report on them every single day here. Guys, got to leave it there. Thank you so much, John Jordan, Ford O'Connell. Appreciate you both.
Thank you.
All right, our next guest, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, and this is what we call a power panel, Bianca, too. When you got Governor Huckabee teaming up with senior fellow at the American Conservative Union and host of CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. Oh, just Huckabee. We're going to get to Mercedes Schlapp, I think, in a little bit. So
we got all the power right here. We need Governor. Great to see you. What a night. Obviously, cautiously optimistic, but we are looking at some really exciting momentum for Donald Trump.
I think there's no doubt about it. And what we're also seeing is not only a Trump presidency, but also a Senate that will be able to confirm all of the appointments that are critical to a president's success. If you don't have the Senate, you're not going to get a lot done. But he can now get judges, he can get his cabinet, he can get ambassadors, he'll get the 7,000 to 10,000 civil service people that he'll be able to appoint and put in agencies to really make more difference in most of our lives than even the president himself will. But there's something bigger going on that I hope people can recognize this. It is a complete realignment of the Republican Party, one that is long overdue. No longer the country club, college-educated elitists, the ones that look down their nose at working class people. Now we are the working class party, and I'm thrilled about it. We're no longer a party that's just white people. We're seeing great numbers of Latinos. We're seeing great numbers of African Americans who are voting for Donald Trump. What does that say? People don't care what color we are. They want us to be Americans, and that's a beautiful thing we're seeing tonight.
It's a positive message, and it's one also, I think, with a lot of hope. And, when we look at sort of where we're going as a country, people say we're on the wrong track. where is the American dream and who can help best let us build it and build prosperous futures for our children as well. And I loved seeing your daughter out there front and center after Mark Cuban talked about Donald Trump not being behind strong, intelligent women, because there she was and so many others. There were critical errors by some of these surrogates. Also, our sitting president, Joe Biden, calling Trump supporters garbage. But these past few days and weeks, that contempt really, I think, has energized people to come out to the polls as well today, Governor.
Bianca, no doubt about it. And having been a candidate many times, I can tell you that when things are said about the candidate, it's not that big a deal. We expect it. We put our names on the ballot. We know it's coming. But when you go after the supporters of the candidate, and then you call them names that are just outrageous, racist, misogynist, threat to democracy, garbage, deplorable, you know, what you're doing there is saying, you're just not as valuable as I am. And that's what has happened. And I think that's why you're seeing people rise up and say, you know, I thought America was a place where we were all equal. And so if we're not as equal as you, maybe you've got the problem. The rest of us don't. That's what I think, to me, is the beautiful thing of what's going on tonight. And I'm loving this because we needed for a long time kind of a little bit of a shaking in America to say, let's get back to who we are, where nobody cares what color you are, or how much money you have or don't have, or how much education. We're both Americans, and all of us get to live in this great country and speak our minds. Free speech is for everybody, freedom of movement, dreaming big and making those dreams come true. That's the country I believe Donald Trump wants to lead us to be.
And Governor Huckabee, one more thought too about what you were saying about how this the whole Republican Party has been reshaped. You think back to the 2012 presidential campaign. Basically, these same attacks were leveled at Mitt Romney about his failure to include women, and he had that kind of infamous comment, "I have binders full of women." Didn't play very well. The difference now with the Republican Party is Donald Trump can point to literally dozens of women who have held critically important, including cabinet-level positions in his administration, and very important positions like your daughter had. And all those women, those women stepped up, and I mean, there were Instagram videos before you could even think about it. So, and also some news we can share with you too, Governor. Bernie Moreno has now been declared the winner in the Ohio Senate race. That's another seat flipped. And as we were talking before, the potential presidency of Donald Trump with the Senate there. You think about Supreme Court nominations too. There's some talk of some conservative justices wanting to retire. All that is now on the table if Republicans do retain control of the Senate and the White House.
I'm a faithful person. I mean, I pray for this nation, but I have so much hope right now when we're seeing all this. And I know that you're a man of great faith as well, Governor. So, you know, possibility for revival,
and again,
for peace.
We see the balance of power here up on the Senate. Just 2 more seats needed for Republicans to take control of the U.S. Senate.
It's incredible what we're seeing.
We're seeing some coattails perhaps for Donald Trump as well. Governor, always great to see you, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Have a great evening, and I think we are.
Thank you.
I think we are too. Positive momentum right now. And again, we're watching a lot of the states that still some are polls are still closing, still waiting for Pennsylvania, which has 19 electoral votes. Watching that closely. Let's bring in our next panel, Lydia Serrani, host of Saturday Agenda, and yes, host of CPAC Now, America Uncanceled, former White House Strategic Senior Advisor Mercedes Schlapp. Ladies, great to see you both. Give us some of your top line thoughts, Lydia. What are you tracking? What are you most hopeful for, and what we're seeing with these results coming in right now?
Well, what we're seeing with the exit polling, Mercedes, we were just talking about it before. In Georgia, Trump doing is much better with independent voters. We also saw him outperforming in Texas and in Florida compared to what he did in 2020. So you're seeing this trend with President Trump that he is outperforming than what he did back in 2020. And we know that the margin of error, it's right there. It's razor thin, the polls. But with Trump consistently doing just a little bit better each and every time in each and every county, it looks like a positive trend for Trump. What do you think, Mercedes?
Well, you got to be watching the Hispanic vote. That is really where the Republican Party and the Trump campaign has made enormous inroads. Kamala Harris, she is underperforming by about 20 points among Hispanics. We've also seen in Wisconsin that the black vote, Trump has been able to double the support of the black vote in his favor. This is like, as I think Mike Huckabee explained, it's the realignment of the Republican Party. It's the working man and woman. It's the Hispanics, the blacks. It is fascinating to watch what is happening in this race. And I did get a tip from one of our CPAC leads in Pennsylvania who said that one of his very pessimistic political advisors in Pennsylvania said Trump's going to win Pennsylvania. So this is a really, really fascinating race for Donald Trump because of, I think, his focus on the economy, what his vision has been for these common sense policies when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the border, when it comes to dealing with national security issues. That's what's resonating. That is what's winning, not the Kamala threat to democracy and everything has to deal with abortion. Obviously, her message fell flat, and the voters are coming out strong for Donald Trump.
Yeah, and for them in Pennsylvania, your insider to say that, probably choking on it. And then, New York Times, the Needle, were also watching that, saying this. So,
right.
But I don't think the media and the liberal media was prepared for any of this. So Donald Trump has this great ability to connect with real Americans. And that is sort of what we're talking about. Real Americans who are hurting. Kamala Harris had every opportunity. She could have gone on Joe Rogan. She could have, done a lot of things differently. Her media strategy was to hide. Her media strategy was to do these softballs, Lydia. And they continued to even re-edit her answers like 60 Minutes. She had every opportunity. Right. She also had a ton of fundraising behind her.
I know, billions of dollars. The other night I was leaving here, the Newsmax studios, and the only time I watch MSNBC is because we have it, all the monitors. And I see at the bottom there of MSNBC, it says political experts say that Trump will execute his opponents. And I just couldn't believe it. We saw with Anderson Cooper and Charlemagne the God, the radio host. He openly said, if Trump gets elected, he's going to put people in concentration camps. He's going to tear up the Constitution. We're never going to have another election again. And then Anderson Cooper, who admitted that he's overpaid, right? He didn't even push back. And that's what we're supposed to, right? Yeah. That's what we are supposed to do as news anchors. You have to push back if someone is saying outright lies.
Well, one of the things also to be looking at is President Trump has a very good chance of winning the popular vote that we have not seen in quite some time with any Republican. That's very, very significant as well. So, again, I think that for the Trump campaign, they're feeling, talk about joyful, they're feeling joyful tonight. I think that the Kamala Harris campaign, and what I'd love to see now, Lydia, is maybe we should turn on MSNBC because the meltdown that they're about to have, I only think it's going to get worse.
It's already started. It started. If you guys, I would just encourage you ladies to take a moment and check out Joy Reid's epic meltdown about the state of the state of Florida. She is probably not welcome in the state of Florida anymore, but she'll probably come anyway because they always do. All right, ladies, we got to wrap it up there. Great to see you both, Lydia and Mercedes. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
See, they put Max Schlapp in the prompter there. But that's obviously
you got to be on your toes.
A lot of times they are together.
Coffee, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Hey, we're so glad you're watching it right here with us. History being made, and to have you cover. We're going to take a quick break. As we hit the break, though, look at the crowds. This is the watch party for Donald Trump in West Palm Beach. Will be a victory party. We'll be right back.
In the early morning hours of May.
Where's the remote?
I don't know where the remote is.
Are you guys looking for the remote? Yeah. Today! Mom and Dad are looking for the remote.
I'm having fun. I'm not even allowed to watch TV.
Have you guys thought about getting a Roku? It has a lost remote finder.
That would make our lives a lot less frustrating.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention, son. You're welcome, Dad. I love you. I love you.
Less screaming, more streaming. Roku.
A 54-year-old terrorist was given a traditional Islamic burial at sea. 9 years, 7 months, and 21 days following his infamous attack on New York's Twin Towers, killing thousands of innocent civilians. Its mastermind, Osama bin Laden, was dead. It took 34 years to build, but on August 15th,
check out ABC.
Trump taking a slight lead over Kamala Harris. There's still significant outstanding vote in the Philadelphia area and other Democratic strongholds. The question is it enough to help catch her back up, and how tight will this race be in the end? We always knew Pennsylvania could be very tight, 19 electoral votes on the line. Michigan at this hour, take a look. These are the numbers. Kamala Harris with a slight lead in that state, just 29% of the vote in. At this hour, the vice president leads the former president in that state. And in Wisconsin, 4 out of the last 6 presidential elections, Wisconsin decided by less than a point. 59% of the vote in, 10 electoral votes on the line, and you can see a very close race. About 30,000 votes in between the two candidates. Let's look at Arizona at this hour. Look at that, 49.5, 49.6 in Arizona. Obviously can't call that race. Nevada tonight, the numbers have not come in yet. Another battleground, though, obviously, where the polls have closed. There are projections we can make at this hour, so let's get right to them. In the state of California, Vice President Kamala Harris, where she was once the Attorney General and the Senator of that state, she wins in that state, picks up its 54 electoral votes. In Idaho tonight, former President Donald Trump picks up 4 electoral votes from Idaho. Washington State, the polls have closed. The raw vote coming in. The number's not there yet. The moment we have it, we'll put it back up on the screen. Too early to call. And in Oregon, the polls have just closed. Cannot call that state as well. Let's look at the map tonight. 270, again, the magic number in the Electoral College. Here's what we've got. Kamala Harris with 9 states plus Washington, D.C., 145 electoral votes. Donald Trump with 23 states, 214 electoral votes. And, of course, those key battleground states, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all of them. The votes are coming in, and in all of those states, it's extraordinarily close. Our coverage of the 2024 presidential election, it could last for weeks. I'm not sure. I was just making sure you're all still here with me. It continues right now.
This is an ABC News special. Election night in America. Who will be the next president of the United States? From ABC News headquarters in New York, here again, David Muir.
Good evening. As we come back on the air in the West, it's great to have you with us here, ABC News election headquarters here in New York. This is an extremely close race in all of the key battlegrounds. I want to get right to Mary Bruce, covering the vice president, covering the Harris campaign. And basically, you got your hands on a memo that went out to internal staff saying this is going to build up. This is going to be a long election.
This email reads like a reality check from the Harris campaign manager to her staff. We have obtained this by ABC News, and she says what we have all been talking about, that they knew this race was going to be razor thin. She says this is exactly what they prepared for, and that their clearest path to 270 remains to be through the blue wall that we've been talking about all night. She says we feel good about what we are seeing. That said, she is cautioning that this is going to take some time. She runs through those blue wall states, saying in Pennsylvania they overperformed turnout expectations in Philadelphia. She says they're seeing especially high turnout with large non-white and student populations. And then in Michigan and Wisconsin, she notes, they are still awaiting a significant amount of the vote to come in Michigan, pointing to Detroit, also saying other results in Michigan are harder to parse. In Wisconsin, she points to remaining vote in Dane and Milwaukee counties. And then what she says, David, is what we do know is this race is not going to come into focus until the early morning hours. David, she urges their team to, quote, get some sleep and get ready to close out strong tomorrow.
John?
But can I say that is absolutely the message that we're hearing tonight from the Kamala Harris campaign. But I am also talking to Democrats who are very concerned about the trends they're seeing, both in those Sun Belt states, concerns about what they're seeing in Wisconsin, and seeing a path. Sure, this is not over. It's certainly not over, but seeing it as a very steep and narrow path for Kamala Harris.
And do they recognize in a lot of these Republican counties, it's sort of like Donald Trump performing just over the threshold of where he needed to be, and the numbers adding up in each one of these battleground states. It's not necessarily sort of the urban centers where they thought Kamala Harris would do well. As Rick has shown us, she has done well in a lot of those areas. It's in the Republican counties where he's done better than he did 4 years ago, and in some cases is doing better than he did in 2016.
Which is astounding, because he did far better than anybody anticipated in both of those presidential cycles, in those rural, deep red Republican areas. So yes, that's the primary factor here, is Trump really appears to be turning out his voters and turning them out at a level perhaps even exceeding what they expected. But there are pockets where she's not doing as well. You look in Wisconsin, that area around Madison, Dane County, she's done very well. She has to do very well, but she's fallen short of where Joe Biden was. Milwaukee, again, a lot of votes still be counted in Milwaukee, but so far what's coming in not as well as Joe Biden did. Same thing we're seeing in the area around Charlotte, in Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. So a lot of deep concerns among Democrats very vested in this campaign. Although, to be sure, as you've heard from Mary, the campaign, the Harris campaign, still very much sees a path and says this is going to be long and we need to be patient. And I think when they say long, they don't mean a long night, they mean a long week.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's sobering, John Carr. Appreciate it. Take no offense. We appreciate the reporting and the analysis. And you're right, because you point to Madison, you point to Charlotte and some of these other cities where she has performed, but not to the level that they hoped that she would in order to pull this off. Donna Brazil, you are a veteran of these campaigns. And when you hear what the campaign chair is saying within the Harris campaign, you've actually heard that before.
Well, I just opened up when I heard Mary say that. I said, oh, I got a memo finally. Look, I've worked on too many Democratic campaigns to throw in the towel. This is when it gets really good. If you're a good Democrat, you know you got to stay up past midnight to find some joy. There's some outstanding ballots. And of course, Philly, we talked about Milwaukee. I'm still waiting for Detroit to come in because for the first time, Wayne County allowed people to vote on the same day. It's going to be close. We're not going to win all 7 battleground states. The blue wall is clearly more important than ever. I don't want to feel like 2016. By 11:20 at night, we were calling into Milwaukee to say, there's nothing left. Well, if you call into Milwaukee now, there's still a lot of votes left. Philadelphia, a lot of votes. So be patient. Democrats, don't go running for the refrigerator and finding a beer. Just be patient. We're not there yet.
Donna Brazil asking the country to be patient tonight. We do have some news coming in here. The decision desk here at ABC News has not projected Georgia, but we can report that Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, has now said at a press conference moments ago that Donald Trump has a, quote, insurmountable lead with the number of votes outstanding in the state of Georgia. He said it looks like this is pretty much done. I think the results are pretty well baked in. And of course, you all at home remember our reporting on Raffensperger, the Republican who famously stood firm during that key phone call when Donald Trump asked, just find me the 11,000 votes when he lost to Joe Biden. So this is not someone who's necessarily obviously very friendly with Donald Trump. He stands by the process. He stands by the hard work in that state to make sure that this election was safe. And tonight, moments ago, again, we haven't projected this at ABC News, but the Secretary of State in Georgia saying this is insurmountable that Donald Trump has won there.
And look, Brad Raffensperger is a Republican. He's elected Republican, but he is a straight shooter. No doubt about it. So, again, we haven't called it, but I would take what he said very seriously.
Let's get right to the ground in Georgia. Steve Osunsami in Atlanta. Steve, what do you make of this? And you've talked with the Secretary of State. Facts are facts, and he has said that it looks like it's insurmountable at this point.
Well, as John said, he is a straight shooter. When I talked with him, he told me that, his job is to call balls and strikes, not to put his finger on the scale. His reputation speaks for himself on that issue. I will tell you that we've all been here, the producer I work with, Brandon Bauer, we've been really practicing our math skills, trying to figure out, whether or not there are enough votes for Harris to make up the deficit, which at one point was about 150,000 votes. We're seeing those votes come in from the different county, and it's not clear, as Raffensperger has pointed out, that there are enough votes, even if she were to continue sort of the break that she has had in some of those counties and some of those vote-rich counties like Fulton, Cobb, Gwinnett, where there's still a little bit of vote outstanding to make up that deficit. I'll tell you, I've also talked with both campaigns. The Trump campaign is celebrating tonight. They're already looking forward to being able to say that this is a state that they won. They point out that they did very, very well in the rural counties. We had a setup here, rural versus urban, and they clearly performed well in the rural counties. Some of those counties where we saw up to 70% turnout, those counties made a difference. What's interesting is when you look at the numbers and the turnout here and the way the vote fell, it wasn't that Harris did so much terribly
than Biden performed 4 years ago. What you do see is that in the rural counties, the rural voters showed up and showed out.
I wonder, Steve, if part of that is the encouragement to vote early, the combination of early voting and day of voting, if that did just help them rack up the vote. The Republican Party in Georgia, when you look at sort of county by county, I think your point is well made, that they were really able to increase the margins. And I was saying with Rick Klein earlier, Donald Trump has outperformed himself in many cases, even what he did in 2016.
You know, we saw a huge early vote among Republicans, which we didn't see in years past. You know, we were sort of expecting, a lot of people were expecting that what we were going to see today was that when the pre-vote came out, that Harris would have a significant lead, or it would have been closer than it was. But I think that evaporated in large part because we saw so many Republicans in the pre-vote stand in line in the Republican counties that had pre-votes. You know, one thing that's interesting is something else we saw today. You know, there are a number of counties where there isn't an early vote. A lot of these red counties also had good turnout today. We didn't see, as we were driving around the city and sort of anecdotally talking to different people, we didn't see the craziness that we've seen in years past. And a lot of that is because a lot of this election happened in the pre-vote. That's when most of this was decided.
Steve-O in Atlanta. Steve-O, thanks so much. Ryan, what do you make of this?
Well, it's not where you want to be if you're the Harris campaign on one hand. On the other hand, there was never, the Trump campaign was always planning on winning Georgia and North Carolina.
This is
but clearly
probably
Kamala Harris's
one
team
of
decided that
the most
maybe
important
they could
nights
get lucky
in
and
history
pick one of these two off. It's not over
of
yet,
our life,
but the
anyways.
fact that they Mike bags are going to be in that blue wall. The other thing that's interesting about all this tonight is
It's a live. You got a live stream on, don't you?
change
Yeah,
from
it's all in
2020
my
to
head.
2024. These states are counting a lot of these early votes right now. Georgia started counting this morning. North Carolina started counting at 5 o'clock. Wisconsin 7, Michigan 7. Like Donald Trump has a lead of about 38,000 votes. So it's just a few minutes ago. I don't know if it, but there's 31,000 ballots that still need to be counted in Milwaukee. So the Republicans in Wisconsin are saying Donald Trump's going to have about a 21 to 24,000.
See, this one says Trump's only got 214.
Before those 31,000 votes get counted. So this is going to be very,
on
very
the other
close.
channel, it says Trump has 246
and if you look at Racine and
votes.
Kenosha County down in the southeast corner,
Something is
Dude,
not.
on the
you'll
other
see
channel, it was
right.
talking about
that
like
those two
election
counties
poll,
together,
like
if you go up
polls
one
getting
north in Racine,
bomb threats and all
Yeah,
kinds of
only
stuff.
bomb threats
23%
from
in.
Russia.
But that's
What?
a huge.
Why are we not hearing
those are
more
some
about
huge
this? We're
numbers,
getting bomb threats
where they
from
need to
Russia
be.
right now.
So let's just drill down on
And
that, Ryan. So
also,
what are your
it also
sources telling you
showed
where
that
does Donald Trump need to be before these final
North
votes?
Korea
in these
has
Democrat-rich
launched ballistic
counties?
missiles tonight.
People believe it. I was just talking to Governor
Where are those
Walker,
ballistic
on
missiles
text
going?
about this, and he agrees.
Why aren't we hearing more
Donald
about
Trump
it?
needs to have about a 21,000
We could be
vote
struck
lead
at any moment with
before
any
those
kind of
31,000 absentee
terrorist.
ballots get
This is all.
counted
This
or
honestly
entered
could go
into
any direction.
the
It's a
system
really
in
important.
Milwaukee that are still
Yeah,
sitting
this
out
is a
there.
world-changing
It's
night.
he's got a 41,000. Trump's got a
World
41,000
change.
vote lead right now. There's more to come, and there's more blue votes to come in as well. So a
Your
lot.
stuff is like people want to see like
Is a real mandate for Donald Trump. You know, the mandate to do this mass deportation plan,
I
a
don't know.
mandate to make
It
America
doesn't
healthy
make
again,
sense.
a mandate to rebuild the military. Talk to us about what you think Donald Trump is going to focus on first.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'll answer that in a second.
So here's
John, but
newsmax.
I was just praying because I am a man of faith. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for God's grace and His mercy and people praying for me. I literally would not be alive today. And I remember in 2020, I remember hearing that Joe Biden was going to win, that he was going to take the Oval Office. However you want to talk about the outcome is really irrelevant because he did take the Oval Office. And I remember praying and saying, God, why would you allow this to happen? And I really remember really remember hearing him say there's a silver lining. It's so people can wake up. You know, there's a Bible verse that says, if my people who are called by my name
Trump
will
246,
humble themselves
Harris 169.
and seek my
But
face
ABC sees that
and
differently.
turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear
How
from
is that
heaven,
possible?
and I will heal their land. And we've been humbled this last 3.5 years. As a nation, we've been humbled. Americans going through some of the hardest times, from right after the COVID to then just the economy tanking. Americans have been humbled, and I have been seeing people more than ever praying boldly. People like Russell Brand, that's given his life to Christ and is boldly proclaiming Jesus at every turn. People like Joe Rogan, who used to be a very avowed atheist, now actually having people like Kid Rock on his show and saying, "You really believe in Jesus?" And Kid Rock says, "Yes, absolutely." We've seen and heard more and more people over these last couple of years profess their faith and love for Jesus. And I truly believe that it's a spiritual battle that we're in, and that America and Americans have been waking up. We've been humbled. We've been seeking God's face. We've been praying, and we've been turning from even the wickedness of just apathy. Even just apathy. That's cowardly. That's actually a sin.
We
And
have
so
more
I
to talk
believe that
about
that's
with
what we're about to see.
we have more to talk about with what we saw in Butler, which I believe was a miracle as well. So we're going to get into that in just a moment.
Absolutely.
Real quick, stand by for 1 second, because that is so powerful and very, very moving. Bernie Moreno, though, just took the podium. He won his race in Ohio for senator. We want to dip in so we can listen to his victory speech here, gentlemen.
But I
Stand
want
by.
to introduce you to my extended family, because as I like to say, we're overperforming Catholics. So I'm going to bring my siblings. If I can bring my siblings up on stage. Where are they? They're all over here. Let's give them a round of applause.
He's the one that we wanted. For sure.
I'm gonna say one last thing. You know, my mom and dad left the safety and security of knowing what they had when they left Colombia, South America. They didn't know what America would mean to them. They didn't know what it would mean to the 7 of us, but they did it anyway, because they knew that in America, whatever dream you have, whatever ideas you have, you can make come true if you're willing to work hard enough and persevere. And my mom and dad are not alive to watch this moment, but I know they're up in heaven watching down upon us and thinking, this is a great country, and they made the right decision. And I know for one person that my mom and dad would be looking down and saying, this is an amazing thing, is my sister Vicky. We'd be so proud of you, Vicky, for everything that you've done. You've been kind of our substitute mom along the way. Look, Vicky, you were almost like my mom growing up, because both my parents worked really, really hard. So Vicky was the one who would make sure that I always stayed true to myself. My brother Luis, thank you for your leadership and guidance. I think Sherrod Brown and Chuck Schumer owe you a little bit of an apology, by the way. I don't think it will come. And to Jose and Alex and Richie, thank you so much for kicking the crap out of me when I was younger. I appreciate it. You made me tough. Hey, look, to all of you, we celebrate tonight not as Republicans. We celebrate tonight as Americans.
I think anybody that stopped by, and here soon we'll talk about all of this.
I will always have your back.
I'll give you my true
for the next 6 years to win you over, because my responsibility is to the entirety of Ohio, and it will always
This
work
was experimental.
to make sure that we do everything possible, that I work my tail off to make your life better. So to Ohio, to all the people I've met on the campaign trail, to the thousands and thousands upon people who prayed for me, prayed for Bridget, and kept us in your prayers, I can't tell you what this means. This is the greatest honor of my life to represent you in Washington, D.C., and I will not let you down. Thank you so much.
That was Bernie Moreno, the new senator-elect from Ohio. He will replace Sherrod Brown there in the Senate. And you take a look at these poll numbers coming in. Something started to change around the third week of October. Sherrod Brown had been favored there, but Bernie Moreno overtook Sherrod Brown in the polls. They were projecting Bernie Moreno to win 48 to 46%, but as you saw there, winning by 5 points, not 2 points. So this, again, is another example where we've seen Republicans outperform Democrats and outperform the polls, and also the coattails of Donald Trump.
He even said it's not about being Republican now, and he talked about the power of prayer. And I just want to go back to you, David, for a minute. I ran into Russell Brown at the RNC, and it is people like that coming back to Jesus, returning to faith, and I feel a spiritual revival in this country. And, you know, you listen to that small, still voice of God, and I just have to say, one of my favorite scriptures, Isaiah 43:19, it comes up when I'm, you know, just doing one thing or another. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. I do feel like there is this moment in our nation where there's permission to talk about God and Jesus again. We just heard the power of prayer there, and I just wanted to share that as well.
Can I weigh in on this for a second? Because, you know, Governor Huckabee made that point also, that we were returning to American values, to true values, and I wonder how much Tim Walz hurt Kamala Harris. She had a terrible campaign, and she didn't answer questions, and she was awful in many ways. But Tim Walz, I think they thought maybe he checked the boxes that they needed. You know, a white guy who was in the military and he was a hunter, but they didn't know that he abandoned his troops. Maybe they didn't do their research. Maybe they didn't know he didn't know how to load a shotgun, and maybe they didn't pay enough attention to the fact that he made his state a sanctuary state for sex change operations for children. And these kinds of things, I think, really disturbed most of America, but the Democrats thought that they had that in their back pocket, but they didn't. They underestimated the values of the rest of America. And now that Donald Trump might have the Senate and maybe the House, what a difference that could make in getting things done. They were sweeping his legs every chance they got when he was president in 2016. Now he might actually be able to
and an actual, you know,